Ahoy matey, and welcome back to the Commodore's table. Today, we'll be discussing creating something from nothing. World building can be a daunting task for any GM, whether you're experienced or not. Life has its way of making it difficult to do your homework as a GM, so if you're trying to get into a game or just flesh out your world a little bit more, maybe you feel like you're a little bit stuck, world building can be a really important thing that's going to get you out of that rut as a GM. Let's talk about some of the topics that I look at when I'm world building and things that I think are super important to make sure that it goes smoothly for you. The first suggestion I have is start with a story. Now, if you start with a story as opposed to a world, it helps you fill in all those details of what the world's going to look like. Now, if you checked out my 8 elements of a story, there's a bunch of homework in there for players, especially, for how they want to create the world and interact with the world. So if you know all of that information, you already have a story beginning there that you can start with, and then you can build a world around that. So that helps to flesh out the world, but the players don't need to know everything about the story at the very beginning. They might not want to know their place in the world and what that looks like, but having a compelling beginning to a story, especially if the players come up with something like, hey, this is how we all want to have met, run with it. Start the story out that way and start telling the story from that perspective, and then kind of expand on that. If you look at Lord of the Rings, great example, I love using it. The world started with the Shire, and you just know the Shire. But as things start to build and momentum starts to pick up, you see more of the world start to become fleshed out. You start to understand what's happening in the world and players' place in the world. And eventually, when they start their journey, they have to understand how long it's going to take them to get to Mordor. And when they do, then you understand what the larger world is. But it started with a story of just the hobbits trying to get to Rivendell to deliver the ring to the elves. And that's a good place to start. Use a map. Using a map is a great way to add some color and some flavor into the world. I have a video where I talk about maps and what I like about different types of maps, so definitely check that out. But for the purposes of this video, just look at different types of maps. You can find them on the internet, and they add a lot of flavor and background text as you're world building to what your entire world's going to look like. Write a history. A great way to just get some ideas going in the campaign is write a short history of what's going on and some of the interactions and of the people and culture in that area. Now, writing a history will actually tell you a lot about the culture and what's going on. However, you need to develop believable cultures. And one of the cool things is a lot of those are already developed in a lot of campaign settings. So different species and different campaign settings, they already have cultural elements built into them. Dwarves are good at mining, elves live in the woods. Use these tropes. It's totally fine. You don't need to reinvent the wheel with elves that live in the sky. You could if you want, but you don't need to. So those cultures are already believable. They're already in the lore and mythology of a lot of role-playing. So just use those. Put those into the campaign, and it's totally fine. Now, again, stealing from the past gives you some great examples on how you can do this. But when we're building this, we also want to think about conflict. And a lot of the conflict, if you followed my 8 story building techniques, that conflict might already be built in, and you might have had your players do the homework for you, which is great. So what we want to do is we want to think about a lot of things that are going on here. So we want to think about the geography, the people, what civilization looks like, again, technology levels, and the economy. What are people trading, who's trading what here and there, and that's going to put a lot of background into it. If you know, for instance, that you're in the mountains, people are dwarves, they fight a lot of orcs, there's goblins in the mountains, things like that. Understanding the social frameworks. Is there a king of the dwarves? Is there a goblin chieftain? Why are the dwarves there? Part of their civilization. Why are they there? What's their culture like? What gods do they pray to? What do they do for fun? What education level do they have? What is their politics like? Are there competing dwarven clans within this mighty dwarven fortress that you have to navigate? Those are all fun adventure seeds that can work to your advantage. What kind of magic exists there? Do the dwarves practice a lot of magic? Do they shun magic? Do they have a higher technology level? And what kind of weaponry are they using? That says a lot about who the Dwarven clan guard are if they're using warhammers and things like that. I mean, it would be very odd to see dwarves using longbows and, spears or long swords. That's kind of like the elven thing. So we know the dwarves like axes, they like hammers. Give them that. It works. It's easy. What are they trading? What's their economy look like? Are they mining? Are they mining gold? Are they mining precious metals? Are they mining gemstones? Are they trading these things out? How are they transporting them? What businesses exist in the area? There's going to be a whole bunch of businesses that exist in this dwarven fortress that are going to help deal with that. Or do they just have a lot of adventurers coming? So writing this story and creating these ideas about what it looks like and how it is in those areas, super helpful. The whole point of world building is to answer the question why. Why are the dwarves up in the mountains mining away? If you think you know, drop that in the comments below. But that's for you as the GM to decide. Why are the dwarves up there mining? And what does their culture look like? What do the people look like? Now, there's some ways you can do this creatively in-game without having to violate one of the big rules of writing, and that is overplanning. So I want to talk about overplanning real quick. You can write yourself into a hole. That's what writers call it when you put too much into it and the story goes a different way. Here's a great example. You've fleshed out this entire dwarven fortress and city. The players show up, they buy an axe, and they leave. Now they want to go talk to the elves. You just spent all this time, like weeks, on this dwarven fortress to explore. First of all, don't take that personally. One of the things and one of the mistakes you made was that you overplanned and you wrote yourself into a hole. So, you also may not have made it compelling for the characters to stay there. There's a variety of reasons why characters might not want to be there. It might not even not fit into the story, and you spend a bunch of time on a story element that doesn't fit. So those are all things to be aware of as a game master, that, hey, you don't need to spend that much time on it unless the players really want to spend time on it. And the best way to do that, I find, is to have an NPC show up. So the players go into the city, and they're welcomed by a dwarven merchant. And that merchant wants to be their guide and walk them around the city. And maybe this dwarf likes outsiders, and maybe most of the dwarves don't. And so he becomes a guide and a facilitator for stays at inns and purchases and adventure locations. That guide can ask him, what do you want to see while you're here in the dwarven city? And what sort of splendors of the dwarves can we share with you? And that right there will tell you what your characters want to do and what they want to experience, without being like, hey, how long do you want to spend in this dwarven city? You just don't know how long they want to spend because, the adventure could fall flat. That part of the campaign could fall flat and they might not be interested in it. And that's okay. Don't get upset with your players on it. But also, if you're a player watching this, do a solid favor to your GM and try and help them out and say, hey, look, we want to explore this. We want to explore that. We want to explore this other thing. Giving them clues on that and helping them understand where you want to go and what you want to do with the campaign, that helps them build those adventures and build those places for you. So, if you have questions about world building, drop them below in the comments. I hope this has helped, and we will see you next time at the Commodore's table.